my leading premise was and is that it's at some point every leader or pastor is going to have to come to grips. We're going to get connected with those two fundamental questions: what
Yeah.
else and what next?
Yeah.
Right? I asked myself those questions after watching my dad. I eulogized him in 2012, but watching him get to the end of his ministry and want to do something different, but could. I said, man, what else for me and what next for me? And in the most powerful moment I can remember, Chu closing down his casket right before I was getting ready to go eulogize him. And there was an inscription written, "May the works I've done speak for me." And I thought about it. There's so many more works, so many more gifts, so many more talents that I have inside of me that I'm not using as a pastor that I need to begin to unlock.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Vision Builders, the show about freedom, what it is, what it takes to create it, and share it, in the age-old practice of leveraging other people's hindsight to bring clarity to our own developing stories. And with me today, I'm really happy. The prerequisite to be on my show is always love and respect. Anybody I love and respect can come on here and share their story with all of you. The idea being that they're going to help you get a little bit more free. And you're in good hands today, because my guest today is Christopher Johnson. I've never called you Christopher, as a matter of fact. But he is a coach. He's a pastor. He is one of the most competitive human beings I know, in the best of ways. And I am just really excited to introduce all of you to him. Chris, say hello to the people.
Ju, man, I am so elated to be here. It is, I mean, man, to finally get a chance to catch up with you. Once we talked the other day on the phone, I was telling my wife, man, I talked to Chu, and it's just such a blessing to be able to reconnect. And I'm
Yeah.
happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. Whatever somebody's background, whatever their faith experience has been up until this moment, one thing about the principles, and I've been following you for a while, and one of the reasons I'm so glad we did reconnect is as I think this just kind of happens. We keep track of people in this day and age, right?
Yeah.
But nothing ever happens from keeping track of people. Like, we do have to connect, right? And so I'm glad I reconnected. But what I was noticing was what you're putting out, the content you're putting out. By the way, if you're not following Chris, I would invite you right now, pause, take a minute, and go follow his content. But what he's putting out is just good. It's stuff, we were talking about the idea of getting unstuck. If you have a vision of where you want to go, there's going to require at some point you to get busy acquiring some skills, acquiring some knowledge, acquiring some habits to practice that are going to elicit those results that are gonna catalyze, be a catalyst for those results. And I so appreciate, Chris, what you're doing, what you're putting out. But and because you got a lot of things going on. There's a lot of people looking to you for support and help, and yet you're busy continually putting out content to help as many people as are willing to tune in. How did all that start? Like, what even made you go, yeah, now this is what I gotta do?
Yeah, well, listen, as I was listening to your introduction and you talking about what your podcast and your vision is for what you're doing, it reminded me of a quote by the great Danish philosopher Soren Kierkegaard, who said that life is lived forward but understood backward.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think back over all of the years of experience that I've had and all of the things that I've done, and from sports to being in ministry and things of that nature, and tying those things all together, I understand now why I went on those paths, so that I can help pull another generation along and say, hey, maybe you can learn from these experiences. Someone asked me this the other day, hey, what would you do differently if you had to start all over again? And I would do tons of things differently,
Yeah.
just simply because the time is different, and
Hmm.
so backing up a bit for those, of course, I want to thank you again for letting me share in your audience and your platform. But for those who maybe don't know me, I am a pastor for the past 13 years. I've been in ministry for the past 20 years or so. I grew up in ministry. My dad was a pastor, and so, but I've also had great experiences in the sports world as well. I played football as early as 6, and so I've been involved in sports and ministry pretty much all of my life. And so I went to MTSU to play football. We played football there. I stayed around and still doing ministry, got my degree, got married, have this beautiful family, and I started pastoring a church. And after a year of my pastoring my first church, we just stepped out on faith and started a church that began in my living room. We did 6 years in a funeral chapel, and then now we've purchased our own property, sitting on 15 acres, and just built another building on that campus as well. And so, but there was still this sense too of emptiness in my life, and I say that because this is kind of leading me into one of the concepts that I'm championing right now called Pastor Plus. It's this idea that ministry leaders, pulpiteers, teachers in the gospel, or pastors who have skill sets that they have to shelve just because they're pastoring. I felt like that going into maybe my eighth, ninth year pastoring, that maybe there's something else that I should be doing. And so my leading premise was and is that it's at some point every leader or pastor is going to have to come to grips. We're going to get connected with those two fundamental questions: what else and what next,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Uh, and so I asked myself those questions after watching my dad, who I eulogized him in 2012, but watching him get to the end of his ministry and want to do something different, but couldn't. So I said, man, what else for me and what next for me? And in the most powerful moment I can remember, Chu closing down his casket. And right before I was getting ready to go eulogize him, and there was an inscription written, "May the works I've done speak for me." And I thought about it.
Wow.
There's so many more works, so many more gifts, so many more talents that I have inside of me that I'm not using as a pastor, that I need to begin to unlock. And so from there, I really started to think about what else I have experience in, what else I'm good at, what other talents and skills that I have. And I've always been a motivator, always been an encourager, always been a mentor in some sense. And so then I started this business called the Greatness Coach, what I'm doing now,
Mhm.
and it's mentoring and coaching and motivating people. So literally I'm getting the best of both worlds, so to speak. I'm actually walking in my purpose as a pastor, and I am a pastor. I'm proud of that. Plus, I love to motivate and mentor people and organizations, structural, helping them structure their organizations, and I love to motivate entrepreneurs and business leaders as well. So that was kind of how the whole concept started, and I'm really excited about where we're headed.
Well, you should be. I mean, the thing is, I really have believed for a little while now, the quality of our lives
Mm.
is directly related to the quality of questions we ask ourselves, right? Like,
Wow.
if you ask yourself weak questions, you have weak experiences that are kind of lukewarm, that are kind of wandering generalizations. And as you were telling that story, motivate. There's this image I have of you because if any of you watching haven't put it together, Chris played football at MTSU. I played football at MTSU. We were teammates. Like
Yeah.
that's how we came to know each other. And he's talking about being in ministry for 20 years. Let's just be honest. In 1999, that's when I met you. And
Yeah,
yeah. And
it's
you
crazy.
certainly were pretty instrumental, along with a couple of other guys, of just encouraging me. But what I love
Wow.
about how you did that, and talks about identifying your gifts, is you did it with a smile and an intensity. It was almost as if to say, like, Chris Johnson, we working out here. I don't care what you're doing right now, but we working out here, and we're gonna have fun doing it. And that's a lot different than, shaking your finger and saying to somebody, you ought to, hey man, why don't you? That was never my experience with you at all. It was,
Wow.
we are working out here, get better, and like, you know,
It's always been the story of my life. I was never, even when I think about um coming out of high school, going into college, I was
mhm.
not the tallest guy. I'm 5'8" on a good day. You
When you
know,
got good sleep, stress.
yeah, right, right, right. I was never the fastest guy. I had the least amount of newspaper articles on my team. I was not the most popular guy on the team. I was the one no one saw coming, right?
Hmm.
So nobody gave a chance to get a scholarship. And when it was time to get a scholarship, I was the one who who got the scholarship, and nobody really even expected it, right?
Hmm.
Because I wanted everyone to know, you may be taller, you may be faster, but I'm going to outwork you.
Hmm.
And that's literally how I got a scholarship. And even when I played, I'm a true freshman at MTSU, and I'm a
Hmm.
starting strong safety,
Listen,
playing against Mississippi State, right?
starting strong safety at 5'8", maybe 160, maybe one, like,
Maybe,
maybe. You gotta think about
maybe.
that. D1 college football, strong safety,
Yeah,
5'8",
man.
160. And there were some moments where, not that we're gonna spend a lot of time reminiscing about those days 20 years ago. However, I think it plays into your character, and like, for
Most
those of
definitely.
us who know you, the obvious of what you then started to ask yourself about, like, surely I was created this way. Surely there were some things and experiences and relationships that I've had that led me to a place where I have some competencies, right,
Mhm.
in these areas. And so, like, Chris Johnson backed down from no one or anything. Like, knowing that, like, okay, so there were some moments where I remember, just for fun, like, we weren't even at practice. Like, we'd
Yeah.
be on the yard, like, going from here to there, fully dressed. And you would like call somebody out and like, can you, I remember like walking next to you and just realizing, like, this dude is about to have somebody fully dressed on their way to class, drop their books and run a route to see if they could get by him. I was
Well,
like, compete in any, ready in all seasons to compete. And I was like, okay, I can learn something from just from that. Now, obviously, I was a lineman, so my competition was a lot more in your face. But
man,
I think this idea of inspiring, it's not what you say, it's who you are.
man, I come from a long line of competitors, right? My brother and I think my competitive nature came from just around the house.
Hmm.
My brother and I would compete at everything. My sister has a competitive edge. While she never played sports, she's competitive,
Oh
right?
yeah.
We have a competitive family. We would play games and during holidays, and like it would be, and it still is, like extremely competitive.
I
Like
can picture that. Yeah.
you don't just lose in spades. Like you got to win, right?
Yeah.
The team selection is crucial around here.
That's
But
awesome.
you began to understand, and I say this as I'm mentoring young men on our football team now, you begin to understand that lessons in sports becomes lessons in life.
Hmm.
Like what we learn on the field, on the court, it literally is applicable to life. So my competitive edge now, it is, and I tread these waters lightly, because when you get in ministry, you're told, okay, don't compete. I'm not competing with any other church or any other pastor. I'm competing with myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I now say, am I going to outdo what I did last year? Am I going to be a better pastor today, this week, than I was last week?
Mm-hmm.
And so you just constantly take these components of your demeanor and disposition, and you keep applying them to your life every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So I use those things even in what I do in ministry.
Well, of course. I mean, and like you said, your upbringing, your family, like really the oven in which you baked in. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it made you who you are. But this is not to let anyone else listening to this off the hook, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is, just because you might have had a few things that gave you an edge mentally, you know, mother and father in the home, brother and sister competing, having a strong a strong moral compass from the start, wanting to play a hard sport like football, like those all things are not coincidence, right? We understand that, like, that's all a part of your makeup, but that's not to say that anyone else who maybe wasn't, didn't have all those things that I just mentioned, isn't to find a way to be better every day. That your gifting or your circumstance does not necessarily mean that greatness is only for you or people like you. Everybody, right? Like everybody, I believe, has an opportunity to just take one step ahead of where they are now, and then another step after that, and then another step in one way or another, right?
Man, I'm surprised you didn't play basketball, because you're just throwing me an alley-oop right here, because you said everybody, and you talked about greatness, so I'm the greatness coach. One of my slogans is, I believe everyone can be great. So I believe, because the reason why I believe that is I believe greatness is a mindset. It's a disposition. I believe that greatness is not something, you don't wake up great. You apply things to your life. Greatness is a process. It's you have to live it out. And so I have a greatness model that I use. Those who ask, like, how can I be great? How can I achieve greatness? So it's an acronym. The G stands for growth. The R stands for reputation. The E stands for effectiveness. The A for attitude, and the T for toughness. Like, I think if you can do those things, you can wake up and be great at anything. So even if I didn't play football, if I didn't grow up in that kind of home, like, you can apply those things to your life every single day. As I said, my sister didn't play sports, but she walks in these very same principles.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have to put on a helmet to be great. You don't have to shoot a basketball, to grow. You don't have to be a baseball player to have some effectiveness in your everyday life. And so football is what I did. It's not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and I think people miss that. We get identified by what we do. And the danger in that is, when your time is done, to stop doing that, now you have no identity. So when I'm mentoring young men, I have a shirt made, a sweatshirt that says, I'm a man first. Like, everything that makes me a man, my attitude about growth, my attitude about reputation, my attitude about effectiveness, my attitude about my approach or my attitude, and my attitude about toughness, all of that makes me a man, I'm that first. And then I'm my title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really powerful, because the identity really is foundational to your actions. I used to I used to train athletes, and I would say to them as we were warming up, I was like, listen, every good farmer knows you don't water an apple and you don't feed wool. You water the roots and you feed the sheep. You are not wool, man. You are not the apple. Like, you are a person. And so we talk about your goals, and that's fine. But your goals are if they're going to ever manifest in time, your goals have to be an extension of who you are. They are not who you are. Like,
I like it.
and,
Yeah.
so this idea of a mindset, like who you are, your identity, what you believe about yourself, and you're talking about reputation. One of the things about that word is reputation with others follows the reputation you have with yourself.
Mm,
I mean,
yeah.
you can fool some people sometimes, but you can't fool all the people all the time, right? I don't know why I'm quoting Bob Marley today, but you know what I mean. You can't, for a person to have, and oh, by the way, all those principles are about integrity. All those
Most
principles
definitely.
presuppose that there are going to be there's going to be adversity in life. The
Most
boat is
definitely.
going to rock sometimes. So what are you going to do about it? What tools, what characteristics, what ideas are you going to have that are pushing harder than the pressures from the outside, right? Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that idea of when you describe great, greatness, and everybody can be great, and it's starting with the mindset. We're talking about an identity that is based in integrity. Like I've got what it takes to deal with this
Yes.
life. The grace that I need has been given to me. Now act like it. Go prove it. Go walk that out. And I'm thrilled. One thing I wanted to just to mention, not that your kids are on the podcast right now, but one of the evidences I think that this is not just some stuff that you say out there is
Yeah.
like the little things that I see happening with your kids. I mean, your son just signed to go play at our alma mater. Did I
Yeah,
make that
man.
up? Did we
No,
like
he did.
he did? And I mean, I think that's a picture of health. Not that everybody's supposed to go play college football, but here's a guy who admires his dad enough. The guy who sees all the, how like our best self that we try to put out there.
Yeah.
Our kids will they'll tell on us if there's a difference between what's out there and what's in here. Like and they'll reject a lot of that we show them. And so the fact that you have a son who is in some ways already showing that he is following in your footsteps, that must mean he respects the steps. He respects the man. And I say that for all the people listening, that you're not talking about an idea guy, because there's a lot of people in the space, in the personal development space, who they read a book, they tweak some concepts, and then they want to go get on a stage and teach these concepts. But if your
Wow.
kids think you're full of it, chances are probably are. And so I just wanted to bring that up because like you
It's,
you've got
you know,
kids
it's so
following.
it's so powerful, because as I mentioned, I was a PK. I watched my dad in ministry.
Mm-hmm,
My son just experienced the same thing. And you're so right. If you are your whoever's in your house, whether it be your wife or your kids, they know the real you.
mm-hmm.
And if something is inconsistent there, they'll be the first to pick it out, right?
And put you
And
on blast.
it puts you on blast,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And one of the things that I really so love and about my son is not only does he sign a scholar, not is he signed to go and play with MTSU, but he's in his own regard, man. He's an influencer. He's
Mm-hmm,
a voice for his generation. He has his own YouTube channel. He has his own podcast. He's he does Tuesday motivational videos. He's a
mm-hmm,
voice for he's already engaging in ministry. So he's blazing his own trail. He's doing it his way.
mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things my wife and I are so proud of him. And then my other son, he's doing his thing with wrestling. He just placed in state
Mm-hmm.
uh as a wrestler. He's a 3-star wrestler as a freshman. It's his first year. He just started doing it.
Wow.
He's coming into his own. My daughter, she's into arts. She's a dancer, a singer. She's playing instruments, and
Mm-hmm.
she's an actor. So what we're most proud of is that they're finding their way to impact the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't be more proud of that. But I think, me talking about having that plus side, like everyone finding what problems you're to solve in this world, what solution will come out of your life. I really believe that we all are answer to some problem. you know, and so that's tied to our purpose, right? And so I think that's what I'm most proud of with my kids is that they found a lane that they're trying to run in, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, and as a dad, like your kids are older than mine, but like if you really want a measuring stick, not that looking backwards isn't necessarily, I mean, I know a lot of people, you can't go forward until you've examined where you've been, right? Like
Yeah,
I think there's some validity to that for sure. But it is a joyous thing to see your kids understand the nature of purpose, right?
my God.
Like just to understand that their life matters, that the relationships that they build, their capacity to build them, um, to show up with empathy with another human being like that. That's the whole. You know, at least functionally, for all the things that we teach them, the lessons that we teach them, like functionally, if you can go and influence somebody's life to truly empathize with them, not I'm not talking about sympathy where you're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's rough, but like you can actually go into somebody's pit with them and just sit with them for a while, and
Oh
being
yeah,
able to
man.
slow
That's
down your world to do that because you see purpose, you see that wherever you are, you have an opportunity to love on somebody, like to help somebody with whatever skills you get. Because like the hope, I don't know, for me as a dad, my hope is that my daughters will have a sense of urgency about collecting the skills that match their nature so that they can go on mission, right? um
yeah. Yeah.
and I, are there days when I'm terrified as to whether or not I'll be able to do it? Yep. But those are also the days that I have to remember it's not just me doing it. Like it's I'm a part of this process, and
Man,
those
yeah.
little people have something already. There's a spark in them already. I'm not starting from scratch. Like God loves them just as much as He loves me, so we'll be all right. So
That's
I
good.
find that interesting. I want to switch gears for just 1 second because the greatness coach, the story behind that, you were for the last couple of years, I want to say, we're running these, like, maybe I don't know, maybe I've just seen more of it recently, so maybe it hasn't been a couple of years, but I get the feeling that it was one of those 10-year overnight success situations, like the whole man maker. Like little those events that have been happening, and seeing these young, I think they look to be like high school age
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
coming in and showing up. Eh, one thing that I have noticed about America, I was born in Nigeria, and so I have these those cultural contexts, is that we don't really have a lot of coming of age opportunities for people to mark times where they went from this state to this new state where the
Yeah.
expectation now on their life has gone up.
Most definitely.
Like we don't level up on purpose in the West very much, especially when it comes to our young people. And we do it in the corporate world a little bit via like promotions, I guess.
Yeah.
But so for me to see you out there teaching this greatness concept with young people, was that something that ever occurred to you, like this opportunity to say, I'm leaving childish things behind and taking on the mantle of manhood, or was it just kind of baked in? Like, how did that come to you?
Well, it is so interesting, and you're probably going to hear me reference my dad several more times in this conversation. It's just how influential he was in my life. But you made mention of some people not growing up and having that,
Hmm.
and when my dad died, I believe traumatic experiences like that will drive you. People can use trauma for several different reasons. For me, I think it either drive or draw you. It to me, it drew me closer to my purpose. It was
Hmm.
like, okay, how many? Let me tell you this story because I think it's relevant. When my dad died, of course, I'm a pastor. I was getting people sending me scriptures, and people were sending me praying hands, and I mean all of that. But as someone who does it, it doesn't really hit you the same way. The one text I received was from one of my friends who's in North Carolina. You know, he's not a Bible toting, scripture quoting guy. He loves God, but you know, that's just not who he is.
Mm-hmm.
He said something to me that really, really made me get up and stop feeling sorry for myself, and just help me get through the grieving process.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the middle of all of these prayers and scriptures and things that I'm receiving, I get his text. He said, "Hey man, look, I don't have any scriptures to give you. I don't have any long prayers to give you. What I can say is that you had 32 years of your life with your dad, but I never knew mine." That hit me in such a way I cannot explain. I said, I wow, I have memories, I have lessons. I inherited all of my dad's sermons. I have so many things that I can reference to say, this great man showed me how to be a man. And I said, think about, you know, so many men like my friend who
Mm-hmm.
says to me, I never knew my dad. So everything you
Wow.
said you had, I don't have. And
Mm-hmm.
he calls me one day and he says, look, I'm a fatherless father. So I don't even know if I'm doing this right. And man, I picked up a pen and I wrote a book entitled Man Made Men. So that was the inspiration of my book, because I said, how many young boys didn't have a dad like mine, but need these lessons? And
Mm-hmm.
so what I did was I put that in a book. That was the inspiration behind the academy, because I said, now I want to move from just the book. I want to actually get guys in a room and walk them through how to build a manhood model. And that's what the inspiration behind the program was. It was literally saying someone else needs to be impacted the way I was impacted by
Mm-hmm.
having a man show me how to be a man. And it's no offense at all to any of the single mothers. My dad was raised by a single mother. So it's no offense at all. But I do believe there's some lessons, some attributes, some
Mm-hmm.
things about manhood that only men can give men. And then consequently, there's some things about womanhood that only women can give women. So that was the whole inspiration behind the book. And that's where we are.
Yeah, no, that's powerful. I mean, and honestly, it's true. Not that I could have said anything else, but you know, the idea, you know, to whom much is given, much is required.
Yeah.
And in this day and age, we live very much in a fatherless generation. Even the kids who have a dad that they know that lives at the same address
Yeah.
are very much, in a lot of ways, unfathered.
Most definitely.
And I remember a friend of mine, his name's Matt. We were just talking, and I was, you know, over the years, I just keep, whenever we talk, kind of like what you were just saying, stories of things that my dad has told me just would just come up, or experience that I had with my dad, or still have with my dad. Um, and at some point, like 2 years, I think, into our friendship, he's just like, dude, the relationship you have with your dad is not normal. I hope you understand that. Like, I hope you understand that, like, most men, when they think of their own fathers, it's just a pit of hurt and broken expectations. And, you know, like, they don't know how to process through that. And so he challenged me. He said, you know, as it relates to you, you should probably consider what part you might have to play in helping grown men kind of put that back together. I'm like, I'm not qualified for that. But I think, on, like I said, you know, the bit about being true, I think there's something to be said. You know, I am grateful that I still have my dad, but that I was well fathered. I'm
Yeah.
still, I mean, and you know, no one's gonna live forever on this side of heaven, but like, the idea here that my dad's input in me is not just for me is
Wow.
something that I have to address. And it's not just for his grandkids, like my kids.
Right.
Like
Right.
there's utility in the way I treat everyone that comes from the relationship that I have with my dad. And
Most definitely.
and then not taking that for granted was harder when I was younger. But the older I get, the more people I run into, the more experiences I have, the more I start to realize, like, yeah, it's not normal. It's not normal to be a 30-something-year-old man, nearly 40, and still, when you think, like, who are your heroes, that your dad's the first name that comes up.
And you typically never know. You're right.
Mhm.
One of the things in our ceremony, we do something called crossover ceremony, whereby we those young men who have come through our 8-week mentoring program, and they get to the end of it,
Mhm.
and they're 16 years of age and older, they're going to cross over into manhood, right?
Mhm.
So one of the things we do during that ceremony is we bring the top 5 most influential men in their lives and into the room that day to speak blessings over their life and give them expectation for their future.
Mhm.
Well, I would say out of the 5 men that we bring in, probably nearly all of them, an exception to the ones that have their fathers there, none of those men even knew that these young men saw them that way.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
What I've discovered is there's a young man right now, Chew, that you probably are impacting, but you just don't know it. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
You really don't know it until he goes into a program like ours, and we point it out and we make them strategically think about who are the men that are helping to shape and mold you as a man. And you'd be surprised of the young man that's going to say, well, I would have to say Chew. He's always doing this. He's always picking me up. He's always speaking this. And you don't even know it. I mean, and so I don't know if it's more therapy for the guys that come. I mean, it's
Yeah.
emotional day. Those
Yeah.
guys are like, man, this was good for me. I didn't even know I was doing
Yeah.
this for this young man,
Yeah.
And so it's so amazing how all of these things, all of these attributes, and that goes back to where we started the conversation.
Mhm.
At the fabric of who I am, it becomes so contagious that it hits every area of my life. And
Wow.
then
Yeah.
other people are byproducts of something that is innately who I am.
It's true. It's true. And it's interesting too, like how the wheel turns. How infrequently do we ever get a chance to get our roses while we live, right? Like how
Right.
how often do we ever get a chance to go and just see, like, what sort of impact am I having on a micro level, like the actual people that are in my circle of influence?
Yeah.
Which is funny to say for a guy like you or me, who we have wider spread of people that we might interact with, for whatever that we do, but what sort of impact are we making locally, like on our street? Like
That's it.
what sort of impacts are we making in our communities? And most of us, like, I would agree, I don't really give it a whole lot of thought. Maybe I should, and maybe I don't know. Maybe this is the way it's supposed to be. Like,
Well,
but
you think about it. That's why I think that the concept of Pastor Plus has been so real to me, because it's not just Pastor Plus.
Mhm.
I also have PK Plus, where for preachers' kids. I also have Musician Plus for musicians, and
Mhm.
you could just fill in the blank of whatever you do. Influencer Plus,
Mhm.
or Business Leader Plus, because it's more than just. And so people who are like influencers or business leaders, that are they're in the marketplace. See,
Mhm.
I believe that there's a set of ministry principles, or impact principles that are certainly present in your life.
Mhm.
Like, I go to a church to impact people. You may go to a building
Mhm.
with cubicles, right? Or wherever your reach is, wherever your platform is. Now,
Mhm.
what I had to discover was the church was not my only platform. What you have to discover is that building is not your only platform. Like, you're to reach people in addition to what your primary is. Your main was what I like to call it. Whatever
Yeah.
your main is, like there's some things in addition to that. So I unapologetically say I am a pastor, but I'm so much more, right? Like my reach is so much more. Let me say this, and you just woke up something in my
Bring
conversation.
it.
Because Jeremiah in the Bible was a prophet who prophesied for 70 years and not one single convert. And he said yes to the call of God, and he says yes to the ministry, but he was miserable. As a matter of fact, he had one whole book called Lamentations. He just cried the entire time. He was depressed. He was
Yeah.
bipolar. He quit one day and he wanted to go again. He quit and one. So I said I didn't want that for my life. Like I want to say yes to the call of God, and I know the headache and heartache that comes with it, and I know the reward that comes with it. But then as well, I want to mentor young men. I want to coach entrepreneurs. I want to, I don't want to be limited to just that, because I am so much more than that. Everyone Jesus called was from the marketplace. It ranged from fishermen to physicians, right? To someone who's in finance like you. Matthew was a tax collector, right? Paul mended tents, and Jesus's family and Jesus himself were carpenters. So there's something else. There's some level a level of influence. And the reason why I really feel this so wholeheartedly is because I believe there's a place where ministry and marketplace meet, right? The word ministry means to serve. And marketplace, these are financial terms. God thought it so important that even when we look at salvation, the word redemption is a marketplace term. To redeem means to buy back.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
It is a mode of exchange. So I believe that business leaders and ministers, ministry and marketplace have so much to teach each other. There's so many concepts that we can use that are interchangeable, because when, people enjoy going to work, because, when you start serving some need that they have as a business leader, as a manager, as a supervisor, and you really get them to think, okay, he cares about me. It's built on relationship, and I'm motivating them toward purpose, and they enjoy coming to work, then performance is better because they actually want to clock in every single day, right?
Yeah.
So there's a place where it meets. I'm sorry, I got excited.
No, I mean, you were spot on, and in fact, it was something I wanted to bring back around. Like a lot of times on this show, when people say things, like they just drop nuggets, I always want to like bring it back together, but I didn't have to, because you just did. The word ministry being served, the connotation in that word is serve something. So another translation is to give. So if I'm going to do ministry, it means that I have to be experiencing something that is worthy of exchange, that is worth giving to someone, and if they had it, their life would be better. There'd be more light in their life, And so I think as a business person, from an integrity standpoint, I have to believe every time I pick up the phone to call somebody to sit down and have a conversation, or every phone call that I get, or every time I get to sit down with somebody either in person or virtually, I have to believe, in order for me to have any integrity or be able to sleep at night, is that what I'm doing can bring light to their life, that it can give them something, so that the life that they're experiencing is going in a trajectory that they like, that they want, that is serving their purposes, that is empowering them to do more than they previously did. Like, I want to be a goal accelerant, a dream accelerant, right? Like, I want my life, at some point when I was in the processes of kind of forming mission and mission statement, a friend of mine asked me, well, what would you say your purpose is, Chu? And I was like, thinking about it, and I said, I want the wake of my life to be answered prayers all over the world.
Wow.
It just kind of came out. Like I said that, and I was like, do I mean that? And so then I had to wrestle with that and just go, okay, I do mean that. So now what? Who do I have to become so that the wake of my life is answered prayers, not just on
Wow.
my street, but all over the world? What sort of clarity to my vision? What sort of big, absurd dream do I have to dream, and vision do I have to cast so that I become the who that produces that? And so, no, I really appreciate it. And by the way, like the marketplace thing, like what you were talking about at the beginning about, the Pastor Plus story. I think you and I off camera were having this conversation the other day. Is just like, okay, that's not just for pastors. And it's funny that you mentioned, like, well, actually, we've got musician plus, and I think
Yeah.
everybody needs to be asking the question, what else and what next? That's not
Most
to say
definitely.
that you don't get good at one thing at a time, but it, you know there are wells of influence that we're all supposed to tap into from time to time that might require us to put on a new platform, right?
Most
And
definitely.
I think this whole Pastor Plus idea, absolutely, it's Mother Plus. It's
Yeah.
like you said, it's musician plus, it's actor plus, it's whatever it is that you do. Everything that you do should open some door, but can
Yes.
you walk through that door has a lot to do with your expectation, right? Through life. And if you don't have the expectation, if you're not looking, if your reticular activated system in your brain that filters out all the stuff that you don't need to pay attention to, so that you can focus on the things that are important to you, isn't tuned to where you want to go, then you're going to miss it. You're going to miss a lot. You're going to
Most definitely.
wander through life wondering why nothing ever happens to you. Meanwhile, everything could be happening for you if you were able to walk with some intentionality. And so, I love what you're doing. I hope that anybody watching this uh, can really just get into more of your content, because it's even for the people watching this who spiritually you wouldn't call yourself a Christian. That doesn't matter at all. Because the principle of paying attention to what's going on in your life so that you
Yeah.
can be aware of what's coming next, and you can do it with these greatness principles, I think it's universal. So
Most
um
definitely.
uh so where can people find you if somebody wants to connect with you, or they want you to be a speaker at their next big event? Because you thank you for being respectful, but this Chris has got some energy, man. And so maybe we're all just getting older. But what you just saw was the Cliff Notes version of the can that my man can open. So, but how can people connect with you?
Yeah, man. Thank you for that. Listen, very simply, you can go to my website at www.cajohnson.org. There you'll find everything I'm into and everything that I'm doing. Events are on there. There's also a page on there that talks about that my son, he has a page on my website, and he's a youth speaker, a youth motivator, influencer. So you can get in contact with him as well. Also, my wife does a mentoring program for young ladies. It's all on my website. But you can connect with me. I'm on Instagram at CAJ2C. I'm on Twitter at CAJ2C. Facebook at that's the number 4, Greatness Coach. 4, Greatness Coach. I'm on YouTube. Just go to the Greatness Coach on YouTube. I just had a brand new YouTube channel launched there that incorporates my Greatness Coach products and things that I'm doing there, because I have another YouTube that's all ministry. So there's a whole library full of sermons. But of
Hmm.
course, as we just talked about, I am Pastor plus. So that's going to give you the plus side there.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you just being so transparent and just sharing so generously with my audience. And surely there are some moments in there where people can paint their own stories in, and maybe like your friend from North Carolina inspired you to get up and get moving.
Yes.
I expect that our time together will do that for some other people. By the way, if you like this content, if it's speaking to you, if you if you appreciate it, do us a favor, share it, like it, subscribe, turn on the notification bells, and leave a comment in the comment section, because we're here to serve you. I want to bring if you have an idea of somebody you want to see on the program, message me or comment about it, and we'll try to make it happen, because I want this to be a show for you, that works for you, that blesses your lives and helps you move forward, so that every day you are becoming more free. So with that, I just encourage you all, build a vision, build a life. Peace.